This was our third year coming to the museum, and we've been met with increasingly like just walls, right? We've had conversations with them, but it's always like a conversation about having a future conversation. That's just this like non-ending, like let's converse. And this time around, so in the past 2 years, we've done a more, like what you were saying, like a more organized, like not with them, but within ourselves. Like we're gonna, all 1,000 of us, like last year was, I believe the second year we had a couple hundred more people than this year. You know, let's move all together, like from one exhibit to the next. Kind of like this because for us at the time it was like the power of 1,000 people moving together. But at the same time you recognize how like easy that is on the museum, right? Because they just have to track this one group.
It's designed for that too.
Yeah. And it's also, though, you think about the architecture of the museum and how it's like purposefully meant to separate people, right? The way that these halls like wind and how some halls lead to dead end. It just didn't make sense to organize an action within that space. So this year when we announced that it would be more self-guided and participatory, the museum immediately started freaking out and reached out to us asking like, we need to know your plans. We need to know your plans, in which we did not give them the plans. And then the morning of, as like a preemptive save face on their part, they then offered us 500 tickets. The important thing to note, though, is that tickets are free anyways, so it doesn't matter, right? It's just like they are handing you this ticket as like this way of like, look how good we're being. Like it's a PR stunt. Tickets are always pay as you wish. They just don't advertise that tickets are pay as you wish, right? And then what does that bring up? Like if people don't know that you can get into that museum with a penny, then what communities are even thinking that they can be in those spaces, right? When they advertise tickets to be like $20, $25 normally.
To the adoration of his repellent ideals in the museum's rotunda
and Roosevelt Memorial Hall.
Right? Like, what does it mean that the museum has been in repatriation efforts for 50 to 60 years? It doesn't take that long to give something back, right? Or what does it mean that the museum hasn't changed the exhibits, right, since the early 1900s, or when the museum was founded in the mid 1800s? And like what ideologies were dominant in America at the time that those museums, that those museums, thus those exhibits were erected? Obviously it's not money, obviously it's not time. So then like, what is it, right? And so I think the action is to like call attention to essentially their complicity, right? And they're just like inaction, right? So like, what does that mean then? If they don't want to, what do we do? I don't know. Perhaps then you just unleash like nearly 1,000 people in a museum with like no given plan, and like perhaps people are lighting sage and just pissing people off. And then perhaps you put out a call at the end of it asking people to not just do this on Indigenous Peoples Day, but to fuck up the museum in as many ways possible every day.
There will be a desborde,
right?
Like an overflow, a total overflow.
Yeah, and that's where we're moving towards now, like that's what we're moving towards now. This is much